You wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal just yesterday, an op-ed piece where you said, this is the headline on the piece, antivirals and antibody therapies are showing promise. The FDA needs to step up its pace. How can the FDA be going faster?
Well, look, thanks for having me, Meg. I think we need to place some bets here. I think that we need to work differently than we've worked in the past and look at what could be successful that could have a meaningful therapeutic impact on this disease and be available by August. We need something by August. This virus is going to want to come back in the fall. We want to mitigate the risks of major outbreaks and certainly another epidemic again. That's going to take a therapeutic. The things that could be available by the fall that look like they may have a meaningful impact on the disease, certainly the antiviral remdesivir, that's the furthest along. The other antivirals are further behind it. Remdesivir is going to turn over some cards on data really soon. And that could be on the market sooner rather than later if that data shows that it's having activity against the virus. The other products that could be available soon are the antibodies, the products that are being made by Regeneron and Vir, Lilly, and Amgen. These are antibody drugs that directly target the spike protein on the virus, so a part of the virus that it uses to invade our cells. These antibodies target that component of the virus. And basically, they do what our immune systems would do. They basically mop up the virus. So they can be used as both a treatment in early disease, as well as a prophylaxis. So if you're exposed to the virus, they can prevent you from getting sick and really be a bridge to a vaccine.
What can the FDA be doing that it's not doing now, in your view?
I think there needs to be a more deliberate sort of industrial policy. We need to actually take the 4 or 5 manufacturers that we think have the best odds of success in the near term and work very closely with them, work very directly with them to try to bring these things through development. And instead of looking at the whole universe of 300 products or so that are in development at various stages of development, try to focus on the ones that are likely to succeed and the ones that are likely to have a meaningful impact on the disease in the near term. So that means focusing clinical trial resources. So to the extent that there's a master protocol, focus that master protocol on the products that are likely to be successful. And I think it's really these 5 or 6 products. There might be some others that I'm missing, but certainly these 5, really focus on them, work very directly with the companies, give real-time feedback. The kinds of things that you've seen the agency do, for example, in the setting of oncology trials where you have unmet medical needs, rare tumors, where the agencies work very closely with product developers, giving them feedback almost immediately as data accrues on how to adapt clinical trials and what other steps they can take to try to speed products through the development process.
Dr. Gottlieb, who pays for that kind of full-court press on therapies that you're describing? Is it the federal government and the taxpayer? Is it the private companies themselves? Where does the money come from? And are we putting enough money into that full-court press?
Well, look, the resources are there. We all pay for it. This is federally funded enterprises inside the Food and Drug Administration and other components of government. That's what they're there for. And the people at FDA are public health minded. They want to be working on these challenges. I've worked with them. I know the spirit of that agency and what they must be doing right now. I think that the issue, though, is one of placing bets and focusing. There's a lot of people pounding on the agency now with a lot of different ideas on how to treat this infection. And a lot of people asking the agency to focus on different ideas, including probably folks on Capitol Hill and folks within the administration. I know what it's like to sit in that seat. And I think what we need to do is to say to the FDA, decide which products you think are most likely to be successful by August and are most likely to have a meaningful impact on this disease to prevent another epidemic, certainly, but prevent large outbreaks as well. And focus on those products with this sort of industrial policy, just like we did with the Mercury rocket project, where we worked with 3 or 4 different manufacturers to come up with a capsule. We need to work with the 3 or 4 or 5 pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies that are most likely to be successful in the near term and try to get those products to the market. Because if we don't have a therapeutic by the fall that we can couple with a very robust surveillance system to detect cases before they become large outbreaks, this is going to be very difficult. We are going to have a difficult time preventing spread of this virus come the fall and winter if we don't have 1 or 2 successful drugs. Remdesivir might be one of those drugs, but it's probably not going to do it by itself. That drug is maybe as active, maybe as effective if used early in the course of the disease, but we're going to need another therapeutic in our medicine cabinet to really put a dent in this risk.
Well, Dr. Gottlieb, as we're waiting for those medicines, of course, what we have is social distancing, and we are starting to see the curve potentially flatten. Tell us your thoughts on the latest modeling from IHME. That's that model that the White House Coronavirus Task Force is most frequently relying on, it seems like.
Well, that model and other models certainly indicate that you're seeing a gradual steadying in new cases in the Northeast and the Pacific Northwest. That's been underway for some time. And most of the northern states. There's a lot of encouraging signs that the mitigation steps we have been taking are having an impact. That model showed some reductions overall. So it even showed reductions in Louisiana and Florida and Texas and Georgia. So it was a very encouraging update. But remember, they're just fitting a line to a curve. They're not really doing a dynamic model to try to take accommodation of policy decisions. And I think where that model may be a little bit off is states like Texas or Georgia, where you see very little testing going on. So Texas and Georgia are testing about 0.20% of their population compared to New York, which is testing probably about 1.4% of their population now. They're leading the nation. So, data in, data out, if the data that goes in isn't very good and the data that comes out isn't going to be very reliable. And one of the things that concerns me about Texas and Georgia is you see a growing hospitalization rate relative to the cases that they're identifying. So what that suggests is that there's a lot more cases that they're not identifying because the hospitalization rate has been pretty steady relative to the total number of cases. And so the states that have a high hospitalization rate relative to the total number of cases that they're turning over, that suggests they're not turning over a lot of cases.